Myself is Newsmax contributor John Fund and RNC National Spokesman and Director of Black Media Affairs, Dennard. Welcome back. I do want to start now with this deadly shooting at Highland Park yesterday. So 6 people are dead and at least 30 injured after a gunman opened fire during a 4th of July parade. Take a listen to Chicago Governor J.B. Pitzner on our founding fathers, how they would not approve of assault weapons.
Our founders carried muskets, not assault weapons. And I don't think a single one of them would have said that you have a constitutional right to an assault weapon with a high-capacity magazine, or that that is more important than the right of the people who attended this parade today to live.
Paris, I'll start with you. What do you make of his comments? Because if you look at the social media that this alleged gunman posted, it's extremely violent. We saw what happened in Wisconsin. The man used a car. We've seen people have used knives. They've used bombs. They've used handguns. What do you make of his comments?
I think to your point, if someone wishes to do harm, if they have the will to do harm, nothing will stop them. They will use a car. They will use a knife. They will use in prison, they use toothbrushes. It doesn't matter what the tool is, the instrument is. They will do whatever they have to do harm. Second point is, our founding fathers understood what weapons were. That's why they made sure that we wanted to be protected with the Second Amendment, having a constitutional right to bear arms. They didn't have the technology that we have today in terms of weaponry, but they had the best that they had at the time. And so it's sort of ignorant to say that they didn't have the weapons that we have today, so therefore they wouldn't have used them or wanted them. They had the best available that they had at the time. So I just think that trying to make those correlations really don't make sense. At the end of the day, our founding fathers knew that being able to protect yourself was something that was critically important, especially protecting your family and your property.
All right, let's turn now to a bit of a different topic, but very interesting, to California and Florida. California Governor Gavin Newsom is now taking a run at Ron DeSantis and the freedoms, or as he says, lack thereof, in Florida. Take a listen.
Freedom? It's under attack in your state. Your Republican leaders, they're banning books, making it harder to vote, restricting speech in classrooms, even criminalizing women and doctors. I urge all of you living in Florida to join the fight, or join us in California, where we still believe in freedom.
Yeah, right, John, it's interesting because as we see Californians fleeing the state for Florida, Governor Newsom is saying, hey, Floridians, come to California where we still have freedom. What's your reaction to that?
Well, what Governor DeSantis wants to give parents is the freedom not to have their second-grade children indoctrinated with sexual topics that are inappropriate for that age. So I think the governor Newsom is engaged in pure demagoguery. Look, California is a dumpster fire. I'm from California. Governor Newsom previously was mayor of San Francisco. Would anyone want to move to San Francisco now? I love the city, but I wouldn't want to wish it on anyone. The state itself, high crime, that is an infringement on freedom. High taxes, that is an infringement on people earning an income. Incredible regulations on business, which is why they're fleeing the state for Florida and Texas, as you mentioned. That is an infringement on freedom. Governor Newsom is clearly running for president. Now, I think that kind of rhetoric works well in a Democratic primary, but if the Democrats want to lose in 2024, they can nominate one of 2 leaders of a failed state, Governor Newsom or Vice President Kamala Harris.
There you go. Yeah, Paris, I was just going to say that I think that, we've got Newsom in there as a potential. You look at the stories and they're saying maybe he'll run, and then obviously the thought of DeSantis. So he's trying to maybe get a head start. But I do want to get your take on what you make of this. According to a Harvard and Harris poll, 71% of Americans say President Biden should not run again in 2024. What do you make of that? Does this surprise you at all?
It does not. Matter of fact, I wrote an op-ed exclusive to Newsmax a couple of weeks ago that said, I don't even know why you would vote Democrat or support the Democrat Party these days when you look at their policies. It's not surprising that so many Americans do not want Joe Biden to run again. It's because the policies are just horrible. They're hurting every single American. And that's why so many people are leaving California, because it's not just exclusive to Joe Biden. It is the radical, liberal, progressive Democrat policies that are being pushed by Joe Biden, Kamala Harris being pushed, in blue states with Democrat governors that just aren't working, that the American people are rejecting. And so Newsom is trying his best to try to deflect away from his own bad policies and Joe Biden's failed leadership, but it's not going to work. The American people see right through it. It's the failed Democrat policies that just aren't working.
Yeah, that's interesting. Paris talking about the policies there, but 64% of Americans, John, say that President Biden is simply too old to be president. But if you look at, there's a lot of buzz about Hillary Clinton. She'll be 76 at that time. Is this really about age? Or as Paris said, is it just like, hey, he's just not a good president?
Look, I'm no fan of Hillary Clinton's, but if you watch her recent news interviews and you compare that with President Biden's performance on the stage as president, Joe Biden is no Hillary Clinton. He's clearly lost a step. He's clearly lost a step, maybe 2 steps. And by the time he would run for re-election, it might be 3 steps. So I think the American people aren't trying to be mean. They're simply recognizing reality.
Yeah, Paris, let's talk about Hillary Clinton there, because she certainly has been in the media. She did a lot of interviews last weekend. She's been all over social media. Do you think that she may be thinking about making a run?
Probably. I think there's going to be a whole host of Democrats that are wanting to make a run against Joe Biden because they view him as a failed leader, incompetent, and incapable of solving all of the crises that he's created. I think the Democrats are in disarray. And so whether it's Gavin Newsom or Hillary Clinton or Kamala Harris or Pete Buttigieg, that there's to be so many Democrats lining up to run against Joe Biden to stop him because they understand that President Obama was right when he said, Joe, you don't have to do this. And he shouldn't have done it because he's doing a horrible job.
We'll see what happens. Imagine if it was Hillary Clinton and former President Trump again. The media would love that for sure. All right. Thank you.